Hey everyone, hope you all are having a great weekend. I thought I would just take a minute and make a quick video to wrap up chapter 2 and kind of explain to you from more of a practical standpoint how to put healthy eating into practice aside from just what you read in your textbook with the dietary guidelines and Choose My Plate and the dietary reference intakes. But just to kind of give you an idea about how we apply all of these concepts from the text in real life. And we all know that healthy eating isn't always the easiest. As a registered dietitian, I've worked with a lot of patients and clients that really struggle with trying to make healthy eating a regular habit and something that they can stick to. And I wanted to just point out on D2L, there is a list of some really good resources. If you come over to the content section and then come down to start here and go down to the very last submodule, great websites and resources. A lot of really good resources right here, good websites. And one that I wanted to point out are the Dietary Guidelines for Americans. And I actually have it pulled up here listing the specifics of the guidelines already. But the dietary guidelines that are discussed in your text are actually the 2010 dietary guidelines, and they just came out a couple weeks ago. Back early in January of this year with the 2015 dietary guidelines. And your book talks about the 2010 guidelines, and they're still very similar to the updated guidelines, but I just wanted to point that out to you. What you'll be tested on will be the old guidelines. Unfortunately, your textbook hasn't been updated in the past 3 weeks, so unfortunately it won't reflect these new changes. But one thing that I wanted to highlight with these new guidelines is that there's not as much of a focus on weight management and not so much eat these foods but limit these foods, even though there is that emphasis there on, we do need to emphasize more types of foods just to get more nutrients, as well as limit other foods just because consuming a lot of them can increase our risk for chronic disease, things like heart disease, obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, etc. And so in explaining the guidelines a little bit further, you can take a look through here and read. This is under the executive summary that really just summarizes the guidelines. First of all, follow a healthy eating pattern across the lifespan. I know so many people, and I've worked with so many people that it's like they go through their really fit phases and then they're not so fit phases, and they're always trying different diets and extreme diets too. And they just can't sustain them, and they're not successful in the long run. And so you really want to try and find an eating pattern that works for you for a lifetime, not just so you can get down to a certain weight or a certain body fat percent. You really want to find something that's sustainable. And you want to focus on choosing foods that are loaded with nutrients. This whole concept of nutrient density, choosing foods for their nutritional value aside from just calories. So if you think of nutrient-dense foods, they come from all of your different food groups: fruits, vegetables, whole grains, dairy products for their calcium and vitamin D, lean proteins, those healthy fats, things like olive oil and avocados and nuts and seeds. We want a variety of foods in our diet, and so many of those popular diets out there right now, they eliminate entire food groups, and you can really put yourself at nutritional risk when you go that extreme. And we do need to limit certain foods. Most Americans probably get far too many calories than we need. And a lot of those calories are what we call empty calories, meaning they don't really provide much in the way of nutrition. Not a lot of vitamins, minerals, fiber, quality carbohydrates, protein, healthy fats. They're usually high in those added sugars, saturated fats, salt. So we really want to try and limit those and make those healthier choices. And if we come down here to the last guideline, support healthy eating patterns for all. There's lots of ways that we can try and eat better and just be healthier. It's not just what you eat at home, but if you think about the workplace or even schools, if you think about vending machine selections and restaurant selections, and here in a place like Colorado, we're very fortunate because there's especially in the summertime, there's a lot of farmers markets, and so really supporting that healthy eating environment, at all levels. Um, and on this dietary guidelines website, you can read a little bit further down, and they go over more specifics, key recommendations, choosing that variety of foods, just because it offers so much in the way of nutrition. And it's really important too, because so many of us tend to equate the word diet or nutrition with not so happy thoughts. Usually it's a negative thoughts. You think diet, oh, it's a four-letter word. And me personally, I don't want you to think that. As a registered dietitian, I really want to focus on those concepts that your book discuss, balance, variety, eating in the right proportions based on your activity level and your lifestyle. Another really good resource that helps you to kind of put these dietary guidelines into practice is Choose My Plate. So if you can access this again from the Great Websites and Resources tab or submodule on D2L. So when I open this up, it explains a little bit more about how, again, to turn those dietary guidelines into more practical recommendations. And if you scroll through here you see this plate model, and I think a lot of us have seen this. This is kind of what replaces the food pyramid. This came out in 2010 with the 2010 dietary guidelines, but I think it's a more user-friendly tool to use. The dietary guidelines really aren't meant for the average person or the public to apply, whereas My Plate is a little bit easier to understand. It gives you more of a visual of what we should be eating to support lifelong health. And if you'll notice this plate right here, half of it is fruits and vegetables, a quarter is protein, a quarter are grains, and then we've got dairy off to the side. So it tries to include all of the food groups in the right proportions that you want to try and consume them. Unfortunately, for most Americans, half our plate is not fruits and vegetables. Half our plate is usually a protein source, and the other half might be some kind of starch. And not saying those foods are bad by any means, but we really want to try and get more variety in our eating patterns and in our diets, just because we're offered so many more nutrients when we choose a variety of foods. And so again, take a look at that My Plate. Really good website. They've got some cool stuff you can scroll through and read a little bit more. But before I wrap it up, I kind of wanted to give you guys an idea of what my nutrition philosophy is as a registered dietitian, and my specialty is in sports nutrition. I'm actually a certified specialist in sports dietetics. And in working with a lot of patients and clients and helping them to improve their eating habits, specifically more for their athletic performance or just fitness, but also I've worked with a lot of people that are trying to manage their weight or manage certain diseases and conditions. And I just wanted to explain a little bit about what I feel. I don't take any extreme views on nutrition. I feel that all foods fit into a healthy diet. You shouldn't exclude your favorite foods, because if I told you you can't ever eat pizza or cake or burgers or fries or whatever your favorite food is, or beverage, beer, if I told you you're not allowed to have that, it's not good for you, if you try and give it up, you're just going to crave it. And when you finally do give in and succumb to those cravings, which usually happens, it's not like you're eating just a little bit, it's usually a binge. And so you should always make room for your favorite foods in moderation. I really believe in what I like to call the 80-20 rule. Some of you might be familiar with it, but I always say eat healthy 80% of the time, choosing those nutrient-dense foods from all the different food groups. Really, especially those fruits and vegetables. Really emphasize those. I always say try and have a fruit or vegetable at every meal. So 80% good quality foods, fruits, veggies, lean proteins, whole grains, and low-fat dairy products, and those healthy fats. That's where 80% of your calories should come from. And the other 20%, drink what you want to. Really, you shouldn't have to go to extremes to be healthy in the long run. So many popular diets out there say, don't eat this food, this is bad. I don't like to label foods as good or bad at all. I don't think that does much for us, or does much good for us, because when we label foods as good or bad, it's like we're not allowed to have the bad foods and you should feel guilty, and you should never feel guilty eating anything. And a lot of people tend to develop a bad relationship with food because they tend to label them and categorize them. But really, it's all about balance. And so that's really how I feel about proper nutrition, and I definitely take an evidence-based approach to nutrition science, meaning I strongly believe in, what science has to tell us. When I hear, someone at the gym saying, "Oh, well, if you take this pill or this supplement, you're gonna gain 10 pounds in a week," and if there's no science to back it up, how do we prove that? Just because he's all big and buff doesn't mean that that's going to be the case for you, or because somebody took some pill or follows some crazy diet plan and loses 10 pounds in a week doesn't mean it's because they're following that certain eating pattern. You really shouldn't have to go to extremes, and we want to look at what science tells us and multiple research studies tell us. And that's a really interesting area of study, is looking at nutrition research. And it does change. It definitely does change, but the basic message is still the same, variety, eating in the right proportions, and moderation. Um, and for those of you that might be interested, like I said, I am a registered dietitian with a specialty in sports nutrition. So I do practice aside from just teaching. I'm also a nutrition blogger, and I do have a blog site if you all are interested in reading. I'm trying to be better about posting, but if you do want the link to that explains a little bit more about my philosophy, my background, feel free. I do try and include, like I said, I have my food philosophy on here. Um, what I believe a healthy diet consists of. All foods fit, 80-20 rule. Don't focus on dieting, just eat healthy foods. Everyone is different too. Their eating isn't a one size fits all. What works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another. Also on my blog, I have some just healthy eating basics, in case you guys might be interested personally. Feel free to take a look, what you should aim for, as just in general, choosing good quality carbohydrates, those lean proteins, healthy fats. So, feel free to check it out if you are interested. But again, I just wanted to use this opportunity as we were talking about chapter 2, to explain a little bit more in depth, beyond just what you read in the textbook, how healthy eating can be incorporated into your lifestyle. And maybe for those of you that are going into health professions, how you can incorporate that, for your patients and clients, or even in your own families as well. So again, hope you guys are having a great weekend. If you have any questions, please let me know. Hopefully these videos continue to be helpful, and like I said, I'll try and keep posting them. But I'll definitely post some more next week to kind of give you more of an idea of where we're going to be headed over the coming weeks, and just to again highlight those projects and assignments that are due. So until then, hope you guys enjoy the weekend. Happy Super Bowl weekend, and we'll talk more next week.